Discover the incredible journey of a cowboy and a woman transforming lives log by log in 30 days. Jake stared at the horizon where the Texas sun dipped below the vast plains, casting long shadows over his family's ranch. His hands, calloused and dirt-stained, were a testament to years of toil. Yet those very hands felt increasingly like relics of an era fading fast. The whispers of foreclosure clawed at him daily, threatening to claim the land that had been in his family for generations. Each day's labor echoed a troubling question. Was all his grit and resilience enough to preserve the dreams his ancestors had fought for? He focused on the pasture, but his heart sank as the harsh economic realities gathered like storm clouds overhead. A firm hand on his shoulder brought him back, but it was just the fleeting memory of his father. "You hold on tight to what's right, boy," he could almost hear him say. But was holding on tight enough? The affluent townsfolk had no idea what it meant to work the land. To them, he was just a brute, a cowboy too stubborn to recognize when he'd lost. Each condescending glance felt like a lash, a reminder that while they thrived in the shade of corporations, he struggled beneath the unforgiving Texas sun. He was drowning, yet the very thought of surrender tasted better. He clenched his jaw, frustrated with his own swirling doubts. The life he built seemed destined for ruin, and within him was a whirlpool of fear. Fear of losing his home, his identity, everything he'd imagined for the future. Yet as the shadows lengthened, desperation mingled with determination. Perhaps it was time to pivot, to explore possibilities beyond the dusty horizon. Before he could wrestle with that thought further, a commotion nearby drew his attention. A fallen tree, its bulky trunk blocking the main road, became the focus of his fury. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was another weight on his already burdened shoulders. Just as he grabbed hold of the rough bark, a truck slowed alongside him. Out stepped Sarah, with passion brimming in her eyes and an unusual mixture of purpose and privilege in her stance. "What a mess!" she exclaimed, trying to approach the situation with a helpful energy he found irritating. "Let me give you a hand." He hesitated, caught off guard by her audacity. She was a city girl, arriving with her dream of revitalizing the land, preaching sustainability, while he felt a creeping desire to dismiss her entirely. They clashed, Jake's rugged pride against Sarah's youthful ambition. And yet, as they wrestled the branches together, there was something undeniable in their shared struggle. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their conversation danced between their different worlds, the struggles of a rancher versus the eco-warrior's vision for a timber business. Yet as they talked, Jake felt a strange sense of camaraderie, igniting a flicker of hope. But hope carried weight, and that weight tangled with his unrelenting fear that if he let someone else in, he could lose everything even more. Just as their connection began to root, news of a powerful developer seeking to build a resort threatened to starkly sever the fragile threads of alliance they wove. Jake's heart raced at the thought. An external catastrophe could shatter the already precarious balance of his life. Could he fight for his land, for the dreams he shared with a woman who represented everything he feared and more? The moment felt suffocating. He could feel the sweat bead at his brow, uncertainty gnawing at his insides. He needed to make a choice, one that would ripple through his life and maybe through Sarah's too. The impending doom settled heavy, and time felt inexorably against him. As he prepared to confront this force, a shadow darkened his thoughts, just as the door to that meeting swung open. The developer himself stood there, ready to challenge everything Jake had fought for. In that bitter moment, Jake knew the real battle was only just beginning. The tension in the air was palpable, a crackling energy that mirrored the tempest rippling through Jake's mind. He stood at the edge of the meeting room, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders as the developer, a slick man in a tailored suit, strutted into the space like he owned it. Each polished step thudded against the old wooden floor, reminding Jake of everything that was at stake. Jake, right? The developer's voice oozed with a condescension that made Jake's gut twist. "I hear you're the stubborn type. This land has great potential for my resort project." He leaned forward, hands clasped, as if inviting Jake to join in a conspiratorial discussion, unaware of the storm brewing within him. It triggered something primal, igniting a fire in Jake's chest. The vision of his family's legacy, the land he nurtured, flashed vividly in his mind. How could he share it with someone who saw it merely as a profit-laden venture? "You think you can just waltz in here, make empty promises, all for the sake of your bottom line?" he shot back, his voice steady yet seething with indignation. The developer smiled like a predator spotting easy prey. "This isn't personal, Cowboy. It's about opportunity. You're clearly passionate about this ranch, but holding on won't save it. What's it going to take for you to see reason?" Jake's heart raced, pounding like a drum, urging him to strike. He took a deep breath, feeling adrenaline rush through his veins. In that moment, clarity emerged from the chaos. He recognized his fear, not just of losing the ranch, but of being vulnerable to change. For too long, he had shielded himself behind pride, dismissing help and succumbing to isolation. The thought of revitalization, of working with Sarah, flashed through his mind, complicated yet tantalizing. Perhaps this confrontation was the igniting spark he needed. Rather than retreating, he resolved to stand firm. "What do you mean by reason?" he challenged, a thin veneer of calm over the turmoil within. "Reason for me is about ensuring my family's heritage is honored, not bulldozed for some phony paradise." A brief flicker of irritation crossed the developer's face, but he masked it quickly. "I'm offering you a way out, a partnership that guarantees something for you, too. We can make something this land has never seen. Think about it." The words hung in the air, temptation veiled in a silver lining. But that lining dulled in Jake's eyes, exposed as hollow and expedient. This man saw nothing of the land's spirit. He regarded it as a commodity. It began to dawn on Jake that his battle was not solely against the developer, it was within himself. He had to confront the parts of him that hesitated to embrace change, that clung to nostalgia to the point of stagnation. Opportunity shouldn't come at the cost of integrity, Jake bit off. He could see the surprise flickering in the developer's eyes, but resolved to keep pushing back. "I'll consider your offer, but rest assured I'm not selling out my roots." As the developer left, leaving behind defeat cloaked in indifference, Jake felt a shift inside. This was more than a battle for land. It was about redefining his purpose, finding a different path that integrated both heritage and innovation. He glanced out the window at the fields that had always whispered to him, and for the first time in a long while, he imagined a future that wasn't bound by fear. But in the silence that followed, Sarah's voice echoed. She had dreams too, dreams that intersected with his. The realization flooded him. Collaboration might just be the lifeline he needed. As he took a step toward the door to find her, the gravity of the situation hit hard. The line between their visions was blurring, and with that blur came a new identity, a source of strength. Before he reached the threshold, however, a text pinged on his phone. It was a message from Sarah, simply reading, "Meet me at the barn. I have an idea." Jake's heart raced again, this time with anticipation. It felt like a new beginning, one fraught with uncertainty, but rich with possibility. What if this connection with Sarah could forge a partnership that wouldn't just save his ranch, but invigorate it? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, and urgency washed over him. He needed to act quickly before fear could cloud this new opportunity. He gripped the doorframe, taking one last breath to steady his nerves. The winds of change were gusting stronger now, uncharted yet promising. Tonight could very well determine the legacy he would eventually leave behind. Jake strode purposefully towards the barn, excitement coursing through him as he replayed Sarah's message in his mind. Each step felt like peeling back layers of himself, the old Jake who was hesitant and unsure, making way for someone bolder, ready to explore new possibilities. He had long seen the ranch as a burden, a weight shackled to his family's legacy. Now that same legacy whispered of opportunity, ablaze with potential. The barn loomed ahead, its weathered wood contrasting sharply with the night sky. It felt like a vessel of past memories, but tonight it promised the unknown. As he pushed open the door, the scent of hay and the warmth radiating from the old structure embraced him like an old friend. Sarah was already inside, her figure illuminated by a single light bulb hanging overhead. She exuded an energy that seemed to fill the space. "What did you want to discuss?" Jake asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about keeping the ranch's integrity while still pushing forward," she replied, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "We could start small, bring in community-supported agriculture. It's about engaging people around here while also generating income. We grow organic produce, maybe even have a few workshops. What do you think?" Jake felt a rush of admiration. Sarah had always been resourceful, but this was different. It showcased her vision, one rooted in sustainability and connection. "I like it," he admitted, absorbing the concept. "But how do we get started?" "That's why I called you," she smiled. "I have a few contacts who could help us get the ball rolling. It might take time and effort, but this could be good for the land and for us." The idea settled in Jake's mind, a spark igniting a deeper yearning within him, a yearning not just for progress, but for a purpose that fused their dreams and anchored their roots. "We can use the barn as a hub for workshops on farming techniques, maybe even invite speakers to discuss sustainable practices," he suggested. Sarah nodded eagerly. Imagine the community coming together, sharing skills, knowledge, and all of it rooted in this ranch's heritage. It would honor what you've held on to for so long, while also embracing change. As they mapped out their plans, Jake felt an exhilarating rush wash over him, an awakening. They sketched ideas on a dusty workbench, laughing and debating as excitement enveloped them. Each thought exchanged felt like a stitch in the fabric of a new identity Jake was beginning to weave, a tapestry intertwined with hope. But amid the enthusiasm, shadows lingered in Jake's mind. What if this venture failed? What if he couldn't keep fulfilling his family's legacy while navigating this unfamiliar territory? The constraints of doubt danced at the edges of his thoughts. Yet, as Sarah spoke, he began to understand something crucial. Vulnerability and courage could coexist. Facing his fears didn't mean surrendering, it meant growing. "Sarah," he eventually said, drawing a breath to steady himself, "I've been afraid of losing control, afraid of not measuring up to expectations. But this is the kind of partnership I've been yearning for." A silence hung between them, completing the moment with unspoken understanding. They were no longer just a cowboy and a woman dreaming. They were visionaries, ready to redefine not just a ranch, but their very lives. "I'll commit to this, to us," Jake continued, feeling the weight of the words lift from him. "But we need to be prepared for resistance. There are people around here who won't understand." Sarah crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "Then we show them what we can achieve together. Let our actions speak for themselves." The air shifted, tension charging it once again, but this time it was different, a thrilling anticipation of a journey ahead. Together, they would face whatever lay in wait. Jake felt a new resolve forming, propelling him out of his comfort zone and into uncharted waters. As they wrapped up their brainstorming session, Jake glanced out the barn door at the expanse of land stretching beneath a starlit sky. The universe felt vast and open, filled with possibilities. But as quickly as the exhilaration took hold, a cold thought sliced through his contentment. What if the developer wasn't finished? What if the real battle was just beginning? "Tomorrow we need to meet and plan the next steps," Jake stated, determination flickering. "Definitely," Sarah agreed, but a shared glance suggested they both knew the forthcoming challenge would test not only their partnership, but their very vision of the future. And with that, Jake's heart raced again, but now it was charged not by fear, but by the thrilling prospect of the unknown that lay before them. The future was beckoning, but it could come at a price. Little did he know, the developer had already begun plotting his next move. The first light of dawn streaked across the horizon, painting the land in hues of gold and bronze. Jake awoke with a determined fire lighting his heart. The time for theories and daydreams had passed. Today, they would begin shaping their future. He felt an urge to push the ranch's boundaries, both literally and figuratively, appealing to the people whose lives intertwined with this land. As he made his way to the barn, memories of his childhood bubbled to the surface. Days spent riding, exploring, or simply sitting in the grassy fields, contemplating the skies. Those joy-filled moments felt like fragments of a person he had nearly lost in the weight of expectation. But today, he would reclaim that joy. The day began with a sense of urgency. Jake arranged for the first community meeting with Sarah, determined to garner support for their new initiative. Especially in the face of adversity, he recognized the importance of cultivating relationships. He spent the morning drafting flyers, his mind racing with thoughts of what he would say. Each word felt like a step further away from fear and closer to confronting it head-on. That afternoon, as the sun hit its zenith, Jake met Sarah at the barn to finalize their plans. The hum of excitement surrounded them as they brainstormed potential strategies. "Let's talk about the workshop schedule," Sarah suggested, her fingers playing with the edges of the makeshift calendar they had created. "Targeting different groups could help us spread our reach." Jake looked at her, drinking in the enthusiasm radiating from her. "We should start with families and young adults. They're the future of this ranch, after all. What if we included sessions on sustainable living? We could show them how they can cultivate their own homes, even in the city." Her eyes brightened. "Yes, and we can incorporate local history into it, showcasing how traditional practices can evolve." As they sketched out the details, Jake felt layers of uncertainty begin to peel away. Planning wasn't just a task, it was gathering strength for the real confrontation. He understood that by sharing their vision, they wouldn't just invite engagement, but challenge those who felt apprehensive about their goals. But in the midst of their collaboration, Jake's fear began to creep back into his thoughts. The looming specter of the developer and animated discussions swirled with doubts. What if the community was resistant? What if they jeered at the very notion of change? Would they even show up? He wrestled with these thoughts, feeling the tension knot in his stomach. "Hey, you okay?" Sarah's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. She was leaning closer, concern etching her features. I'm nervous," Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if this doesn't work? What if they hate it?" "Then we keep trying," she countered, her gaze unflinching. "Not everyone will understand right away, but the ones who do will rally behind us. Trust in our intentions and the journey we've embarked on together." Her words washed over him, mingling with a burgeoning resolve. In that moment, he recognized a pivotal truth. Action was a form of courage. A decision loomed before him. He could either let his fears dictate his choices or rely on them to fuel a greater drive for change. Finally, after weighing the options, he straightened his shoulders. "Let's do this. We'll announce the meeting tomorrow and dive into planning these workshops head first." As anticipation coursed through him, he dismissed the gnawing doubts. Their partnership was more than just a shared aspiration. It was a catalyst for transformation. They were igniting a new metaphorical flame in their lives, a flame potent enough to ward off the chill of uncertainty. That evening, as twilight draped over the ranch, Jake prepared to send out invitations for the meeting, stepping into the unknown authorized by his wavering courage.
Understood, this would be a test of not only their vision, but of his character. It was becoming clearer that the future was tethered to the present, and so was his sense of belonging. But even as he finalized the drafts, another thought struck him cold. What if the developer were to sabotage their efforts before they even began? His heart quickened at the thought, and he realized he had to approach the situation with vigilance and strategy. The real challenge awaited just beyond the horizon. The fight for the ranch was stirring, and Jake felt it rise within him, ready to meet whatever storm lay ahead. As dawn softened into the bright light of a new day, Jake felt a weight settle on his chest, heavier than before. Doubt was a relentless companion, gnawing at his enthusiasm as he prepared for the meeting. He walked through the ranch, noticing the tranquil beauty around him. Fields stretching, livestock grazing in peace. But beauty was no longer distracting him. It was a poignant reminder of what he stood to lose. His gaze drifted to the horizon, where distant hills melded into the blue sky. A new course awaited them, yet uncertainty loomed large. He had to confront not just the developer, but also the shadows of self-doubt lurking within. The reality of what was at stake fueled his determination, but he needed to transform that energy into something tangible. How could he harness his vision into a force strong enough to fend off impending threats? As he arrived at the barn to set up for the meeting, he found Sarah already there, arranging chairs and stacks of flyers. The sight of her industriousness sparked a flicker of hope. Jake paused for a moment, studying her focus, the way she moved with purpose. He realized that they were not just allies, they were part of a shared dream, and this dream needed robust defense. "Good morning," she greeted, flashing him a warm smile. "Ready to inspire some change?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Jake replied, the truth rolling off his tongue with more conviction than he felt. They worked together to lay out the materials they had prepared, Jake matching her enthusiasm while battling unsettling thoughts. Some part of him struggled to convince itself that they could actually succeed. Maybe every seat in the barn wouldn't be filled, or worse, the wrong crowd would show up. "Let's go over the key points you want to emphasize," Sarah suggested, sensing his growing unease. Jake's mind returned to their shared goal. "We should highlight how conservation is not just a responsibility, but an opportunity for our community to connect with the land more deeply." It felt good to articulate his thoughts, shaping them into something actionable. The importance of their mission became clearer. It was education, preservation, and empowerment centered around a shared love for the ranch. As they finalized their approach, flashes of dread returned, and the familiar voice of fear whispered insidiously in his, "What about the developer? What kind of pushback would they face?" But the flicker of intention ignited in the back of his mind, a realization that he could not afford to buckle under pressure. Just before the meeting was set to begin, and just as the first guests arrived, Jake stepped outside for a moment to breathe. He leaned against the barn, staring at the open fields. A single question persistently surfaced. Who was he truly fighting for? The answer coalesced within him. It was more than the ranch. It was the spirit of connection and resilience that it fostered. Each workshop, every session, crafted with the intent to teach, represented a stand against forces threatening to suffocate their community's history and future. When he returned inside, a sense of calm washed over him, mingling with adrenaline. He had a purpose larger than himself. Standing before the growing audience, he knew there was no turning back now. As he began to speak, Jake's voice emerged strong and unwavering. It's about the stories we share, the traditions we uphold, and the future we cultivate. This ranch is our heritage, and it is time we reclaim it. But just as the first wave of support surged through the crowd, a ripple of doubt hit him again. What if resistance arrived in larger, more organized forms than he anticipated? With the meeting underway, discussions intensified, each voice in the gathering carrying its weight. Jake remained focused, still uneasy with the brewing storm he felt just outside their sphere of optimism. The real confrontation was just beginning, and Jake was prepared to face it head-on. However, as the evening darkened, a chilling thought crept into his mind. Rumors of opposition whispered through the town. One enemy had emerged, but was there another lurking in the shadows? The thrill of purpose coursed through him, tempered by the unyielding specter of conflict. The stakes had risen higher, and Jake understood that the fight for the ranch was only just starting. The crowd's energy crackled like static in the air, a potent mix of hope and skepticism. Jake had laid out his vision, but as he scanned the faces before him, some nodding in agreement, others furrowing brows, he felt the tension swell. The fight wasn't just about the ranch. It was about belief, unity, and an unwavering commitment to protect what had been cultivated over generations. Midway through the discussions, a voice broke through the enthusiasm. "What about the developer? They have deep pockets and influence," an older man raised, drawing murmurs of agreement from others. Jake's stomach dropped. How could he diminish the truth of that statement without diminishing their resolve? "While that's a valid concern," Jake replied, forcing the words out with measured calm, "they underestimate our commitment to this land and our community. We have something invaluable at stake, our history, our way of life." He sensed a flicker of agreement spring up in the crowd, but his heart raced. How could he transform this moment from
fear into something constructive? As the crowd began debating project plans and potential outcomes, Jake felt a crucial revelation stirring within him. They needed a tangible strategy to counteract the developer's influence, a plan that wasn't just reactive, but proactively woven into the fabric of their proposal. Perhaps a series of workshops, not only to educate, but also to galvanize community support. A grassroots initiative could create ripples throughout the county. "Let's put our passion into action," he suggested. "We can host a series of community meetings, workshops on sustainable practices, and showcase the ranch's potential in a way that aligns with our values while demonstrating its economic viability." The enthusiasm surged again, approval surging through murmurs. But self-doubt tightly clung to his thoughts, forming shadows as he wrestled with the risk. What if they couldn't deliver? What if he was counting on a dream too naive to succeed? Amid the momentum building, Jake caught Sarah's eye, the determined sparkle in her gaze offering reassurance. They were in this together, and her faith in their mission buoyed him. With newfound conviction, he called for the meeting to band together. "Let's form a committee. Each of you has unique insights and resources that can strengthen our case. We need to rally not just for the ranch, but for our way of life." At that moment, the ranch felt differently. It was no longer merely land. It was a living symbol woven into everyone's lives. As people stood to express their resources and skills, Jake marveled at the emerging strengths he had yet to see in them, or even himself. They were more than mere supporters. They were champions of a cause revitalizing beneath the surface. Hours slipped away, but Jake's heart held steady. The group affirmed, sharing ideas that transformed hope into action. But with each enthusiastic suggestion came a reminder of the looming threat. The developer would not remain idle. That evening, as Jake walked home, he felt invigorated yet acutely aware of the work ahead. The stakes had escalated. He needed to sharpen his strategies, strike at the heart of opposition before it hit back.
Alone in his thoughts, he questioned whether they were prepared for the inevitable backlash. How would they present their proposal? How could they gather allies without inviting more antagonism from the developer? Each step felt heavier as he trudged, but a realization settled in the quiet dusk. His journey was morphing into a test of resilience. He needed to confront the doubts that had tormented him from the beginning and refine not just the proposal but the commitment behind it. Arriving at the house, his phone buzzed with a message. It sounded urgent. "We need to talk. Heard something from the developer. You may want to sit down for this." His breath caught, and he realized the moment of truth loomed. The real battle for the ranch and for his place as a leader in this fight had just begun. Jake sank into the chair at his kitchen table, heart racing, fingers trembling as he reached for his phone. The message had sent a jolt of anxiety through him, igniting a need for answers he hardly felt prepared to confront. Who would be the one to deliver the news? And what did they know about the developer's plans? He took a deep breath, his mind racing through scenarios both disastrous and subtle. "Okay, Jake, time to face it," he muttered, pushing aside his rising panic. He battled the imposter syndrome tightening its grip around his chest. Who was he to lead this charge? His heart was filled with passion for the ranch, but was that enough? Every second seemed to stretch, and the mundane ticking of the wall clock became an echo of his growing uncertainties. Just as he was about to text back, the phone rang. It was Sarah. "Hey, Jake, you all right?" Her voice was steady, but he sensed an edge beneath it, a shared concern that mirrored his own. "I got a message about the developer. They've heard something new." Jake's voice faltered, revealing a hint of the vulnerability lurking just beneath his composed facade. "Let's meet. I think we should discuss it in person." She offered a semblance of calm, but Jake could hear the urgency throbbing in her words. "All right," he agreed, though unease held him lightly in its grip. Meeting her felt like the only way to wrestle with what lay ahead of them. The hour felt like an eternity as he prepared to leave the house, shoving layers of apprehension away to make room for clarity. He couldn't afford to succumb to fear, but the unknown loomed large, taunting him as he drove to the small cafe that had become their strategy hub. As she greeted him, the look in Sarah's eyes sparked something, a mixture of dread and determination that mirrored his own. They exchanged pleasantries, but silence hung heavily over their coffees, its taste bitter against the backdrop of what they faced. Finally, Sarah set her cup down with a decisive thud. "I heard from a friend in town. The developer is planning to launch a PR attack on us. They're going to paint us as backward thinkers, clinging to the past." Jake's stomach turned at the thought. He could see it now, a campaign against their values, and mostly against him. It would not just jeopardize the ranch, it would tarnish the spirit of everything they had built together. How do we counter that? They've underestimated how much we resonate with people and their ties to the land. We have stories, real experiences. We need to share and amplify them, she replied, her voice steadying him. Stories, but they'll twist those too. We need facts, data that shows a better future, preserving both legacy and opportunity. Evidence they can't ignore. He felt the flutter of fervor returning. Conversations flowed, strategic plotting igniting possibilities. But it was the reminder of community vulnerability that held on tenaciously in Jake's mind. It wasn't just about proving their worth.
It was about navigating through a landscape where emotion and facts collided. As they dissected positions and counterpositions, Jake discovered a hidden talent within himself, the ability to articulate what mattered most, to turn anxiety into action. Connecting with their shared values and mission ignited something deeper in their plans. Every suggestion led to the awareness that he had the agency to shepherd this endeavor, carve an identity into the chaos.
Time slipped away again, but before they departed, a plan began to solidify. It would take relentless commitment to grab both the truth and the community's interests by the collar. They were ready to confront this giant. It was a growth like no other, one that began to shift their entire approach. Yet as they parted ways, doubt crept back, entwined with burgeoning strength. Jake wondered, how would they strategize effectively against the media juggernaut? What if his leadership wasn't enough? He walked back to his car, breath steadying despite the weight pressing on him, understanding that this confrontation was merely the beginning. The final battle was still ahead, and he was determined to face it, whatever the cost might be. The moment of truth was approaching, and everything he had learned would soon be tested. A sudden thought flashed, sharper than before. What if the truth of their mission transformed him more than he ever anticipated? The air outside felt different as Jake approached his car, charged with a tension that was new yet familiar. The weight of the impending confrontation loomed large, but within that weight Jake could sense a flicker of determination beginning to grow in tandem. Facing down the developer wouldn't just be a professional challenge, it was a personal ordeal demanding everything he had. Driving home, the rhythm of the tires on the asphalt pulsed in sync with his racing thoughts. What did the community need to hear? How could he frame their narrative in a way that resonated deeply and authentically? Each question swirled in his mind like a nest of bees, urging him to push deeper into his own motivations, to understand what was at stake not only for the ranch, but for him personally. Once home, he set up a small workspace in his living room, cluttered with papers, notes, and magazines, each piece a puzzle in the massive picture he was about to create. His solitude pushed him to the edges of his own exploration. This was a pivotal moment in his life. Days and nights spent among the ranch's grasses and animals juxtaposed the pristine images of urban development flashing in his mind. The tension between progress and preservation was not abstract. It felt visceral, rooted in his core. He began mapping out his ideas. The stories Sarah suggested danced in front of him. He grasped at them, trying to solidify their essence on paper. Ownership of this narrative meant understanding what the ranch represented, how intertwined its history was with the lives that frequented it. Did they know how the soil felt after a downpour? How many generations were tied to the land? Were these stories entwined with moments of laughter, loss, and love? As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows enveloped the room, mirroring the doubts creeping back into his mind. Why should they care? What made his passion more legitimate than the cold, hard cash the developer offered? He stopped writing, the pen hovering above the page, grappling with the uncomfortable truths he had to confront. It was then that the realization struck him. The worst enemy was not the developer or the impending media storm, but the undercurrent of resignation that threatened to paralyze him. Jake felt a swell of resolve. He was not just going to defend a piece of land. He was going to defend a legacy, his legacy. He had every right to tell this story, not just for himself, but for those who believed in the ranch's spirit. Sleep eluded him that night. His thoughts rattled like branches in a storm, frantic and alive. He needed a more robust strategy to meld emotional stories with data. They could not solely relay their love for the land. They had to ground it in facts that showcased their vision as carrying merit. He tossed and turned, wrestling with the formulations of a plan stronger than fear or doubt. By early morning, he grabbed a bagel and coffee from his kitchen, the taste bittersweet as he mentally prepared for Sarah's arrival later that day. He would share what he had discovered, authoring the beginning of their campaign and laying the groundwork for a narrative that echoed authenticity and resilience. But one question nagged at him as the day progressed. Would he truly have the courage to confront darkness when the moment arrived? Just as he finished typing up his notes, an alert pinged on his phone. The developer's name flashed ominously across the screen, and Jake's heart sank. He sat back, anxiety curling around him like smoke. They were already striking before he had even made a move. The time had come to face not only the developer, but the fear buried deep within himself. How would it feel to stand up for his values and see how far his courage could carry him? The crossroads had arrived, and choosing a path would define not only his future, but his legacy. The sun rose, painting the horizon in hues of orange and gold, but Jake felt no warmth from its glow. Besides the groggy splinter of coffee dragging him to consciousness, an unseen weight pressed against his chest. The comment from the developer echoed in his mind, sharp and mocking, questioning his motives, suggesting that he fought a losing battle. As he combed through his notes, the fear of inadequacy coiled around him tighter than the leather straps of his saddle. What if everything he believed in was just a flimsy facade? Jake shook his head vigorously. Today was not about self-doubt. Today was about action. In preparation for Sarah's arrival, he organized his workspace methodically. An assortment of photographs of the ranch, testimonials from visitors, and statistics illustrating the environmental impact of development looming over them. Each piece represented a facet of the story he aimed to tell, but his heart raced as he wondered if it would all be enough. Just as a soft tap at the door signaled Sarah's presence, Jake's pulse quickened. Would she see the potential in his disarray, or would she sense the anxious storm brewing within him? He inhaled deeply, grounding himself before opening the door. "Hey, Jake," she greeted him, a bright smile breaking across her face. "Sorry, I hope I'm not too early." "Not at all," he replied, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. "I could use some help sorting through everything here." As they settled in, he shared his vision, framing the ranch not merely as a battleground against the developer's interests, but as a sanctuary of memories and futures. With each word, he felt the connection deepen, a collaboration built on shared belief in the land. "People need to hear what the ranch means to us, Jake," Sarah said earnestly. "It's about more than just resisting change. It's about preserving what makes us who we are." She suggested crafting a campaign not just to rally support, but to engage the public meaningfully. Let them be part of our story. Show them the ranch in a way they can touch and feel, the heartbeat of it all. The idea pinned a fresh weight on his shoulders. Jake could bring them not just numbers, but visceral experiences. Testimonials from children who played in the fields, families who gathered for picnics, the earth that breathed life into the community. Yet even as enthusiasm surged within, creeping shadows of doubt still lurked, neutralizing his resolve. Could he really evoke such raw emotion? As they began to outline his concepts on the whiteboard, planning their strategy and dividing tasks, he couldn't shake the thought. The moment Sarah left, Jake was left with a mountain of questions. Would the ranch's story resonate with people who viewed it merely as an obstacle to progress? Coalescing childhood nostalgia with contemporary challenges was not only ambitious, it held the potential for failure. That evening, after Sarah had departed, Jake laid sprawled on the couch, staring at the ceiling. The challenge ahead felt insurmountable. The stakes were immense. He fumbled with his phone, opening the developer's message again, not for clarity, but to fortify his resolve. Then it hit him, a concept solid enough to coin their narrative into something meaningful. Instead of resistance, what if they framed it as rebirth? Transformation without loss. The adrenaline surged within him as he pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began texting Sarah, ready to share the breakthrough idea. But just as the words began to flow, another notification chimed, this time from his old friend Tom, a figure from his past who embodied the very essence of everything Jake was trying to protect. The message was simple, yet beckoned like a siren song. "We need to talk, Jake. It's urgent." As bewilderment seized him, instinctively he felt the cracks of his newfound confidence threaten to shatter. What storm awaited him with Tom's arrival? Jake sat alone at the dining table. The warmth of the day faded into an uneasy dusk as he replayed Tom's message in his mind. It was urgent, a word that always carried weight. Memories swirled around Jake, recalling days spent cutting through the brush, hauling hay, and trading stories about dreams for the future under the Texas sky. But the warmth of nostalgia faded under the looming threat of uncertainty. He had made strides in his journey, but how would Tom fit into this new chapter? When Tom arrived, Jake could see aging etched on his face. Once a sprightly companion, Tom now carried the weariness of the world's burdens. As they greeted each other with a firm handshake, Jake wondered, was this meeting about the ranch or something more profound? A searching for mutual truths? They settled across from each other, tension thickening the air between them. "Jake," Tom started, his voice tinged with concern, "I heard about the ranch and the developer's plan. It's tough, my friend. You need to know I'm rooting for you." Jake appreciated the sincerity, yet felt the reservoir of doubt surge within him. "Thanks, Tom, but it's more than just fighting him. It's about wrestling with this whole idea of what this ranch means to me, the community, the legacy." Tom nodded, the understanding in his eyes prompting Jake to reveal his fear. "I've caught myself doubting if I stand a chance against the tide of change. What if all we build is potential for loss? It's a steep climb, even with Sarah by my side." Tom leaned forward, intensity flaring in his voice. "You've always been a fighter, Jake. This ranch is your blood and bone, and it's about claiming your identity, just like we did back then." The confidence radiating from Tom felt like the embers of a fire reigniting in Jake's soul. Steeling himself, Jake began to articulate his plans. He discussed their strategy of transforming the ranch's narrative, the workshops that would blend heritage with sustainability, the committee formed to amplify their voices. With every word spoken, resilience surged within him, fueled by the legacy Tom reminded him of, the unity that always existed when they fought for something they both cherished. "Sounds like you're on the right track," Tom acknowledged. "But remember, it's not just about pushing against the developer. Allow the community to take the lead with you. The strongest movements come from the heart, not the fight." In that moment, clarity washed over Jake. He realized he'd been so focused on opposition, he had neglected the power of shared purpose. Instead of resisting change, he could ignite a movement that embraced it while staying true to the ranch's roots. After Tom left, something inside Jake clicked decisively into place. This was about collaboration, about engaging the community beyond fear and doubt. The conversation resonated deeply, pushing him to embrace a renewed sense of self, one bathed in action and determination. He no longer felt he was walking alone through the shadows. He felt invigorated by the potential of collective support. The next morning, with determination swelling within, Jake gathered his notes and drafted a clear vision statement for his community initiative. It would be a call to action, framing their journey not just as a resistance, but as a reclamation, reclaiming their land, their voice, and their identity. He called Sarah, excitement bubbling as he shared his realization, her reaction unmistakable. "Jake, this is it. We can host an open house at the ranch, share our vision, invite participation, show them they have a place in this journey." As they planned together, Jake felt a tangible release of isolation, the support of the community shifting from a hopeful dream to a concrete reality. The burdens that once seemed heavier melted into the deeper understanding that their engagement would form a collective strength, one that he could lean on as they navigated the path ahead. For the first time, Jake felt the weight of anticipation transform into buoyancy.
Days turned into weeks, momentum gathered, and the open house loomed. Jake stood before friends, family, and neighbors, the barn thrumming with life as he shared his story and vision, his commitment to preserving the ranch while inviting innovation. The community responded with stories, laughter, and demonstrations of what the ranch meant to them. As they embraced the message of shared legacy, fear was eclipsed by a shared purpose. Through their connected narratives, Jake recognized just how deeply each person was rooting for the future they envisioned together. By the time the meeting ended, Jake wasn't just a leader hoisting a flag of defiance. He was a weaver of stories, connecting lives, dreams, and identities. The celebration in the barn that night resonated deeply, not as an ending, but as the beginning of their journey, a rebirth of sorts. As Jake left the gathering, he felt the crisp breeze of Texas night wrap around him, refreshing and strengthening. The fears of doubt, once a constant companion, felt far away. He had transformed, evolving beyond isolation into a beacon of connection. He stood looking over the ranch, the stars twinkling overhead, as empowerment washed over him. He had accomplished it. He had embraced change without losing sight of what mattered. With pride filling his heart, Jake stepped forward, ready to meet whatever challenge the developer might throw next. He was no longer just protecting a dream. He was nurturing a legacy. It was time to summon all they had built together. Armed with courage, clarity, and a powerful community behind him, Jake felt ready. Not merely to face an opponent, but to forge a future, one that honored the land, the legacy, and the love they all shared for it.
Now, if you found inspiration in Jake's journey of transformation, you need to subscribe now to catch more exclusive emotional stories that ignite hope and resilience. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Your voice matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of personal overcoming stories. Your support could help someone else begin their journey of transformation.